Hello, in this video, you will see how to create security zones to build security in the firewall. Before configuring the firewall, you need to understand how it works. Firewalls have an n number of ports depending on the model. And these ports are configured within the network menu. The network menu is where we find the number or name of the interface, which is X0, X1, 2, 3, 4 in this case, and USB 0. We see the zone to which X0 belongs to the LAN and X1 to the WAN by default. And then we see possible groups in the case of load balancing, IP addressing, mask, how the IP address has been assigned and the connection speed. If we edit one of the interfaces that is not assigned, we can see that the first thing the firewall asks us is which zone we want to assign it to. By default, the default zones appear, which we will see now. And we can also see how we are going to assign the addressing. If it is a LAN, it will ask us for an IP address, a mask, a comment. We can allow management through the IP that we put in X2, in this case, to the firewall. By default, the HTTP/HTTPS redirection is checked, which we should uncheck. We can also define whether or not we want the firewall to respond to pins on this IP address, if we want SNMP traffic or to be able to connect via SSH. On the right side we have the user login. We will see this later. We mean that a user who is not the firewall administrator can log into this interface. We will see why later. In the Advanced tab we can modify things like the MAC address, port negotiation, force it, allow flow reporting, shoot the port, turn off the port. Slightly more advanced settings. In the case that the allocation zone is not the LAN but an ONE, we see that the form is modified. It obviously continues asking us for an IP address, a mask, and asks us for DNS servers. The firewall would use these DNS servers to go to the internet by name, if it will take traffic through this specific interface. Below we have the same options. As you know, Zone 1 management is not a recommendation. An interface is within a security zone. Security zones are a type of object that, like the rest of the firewall objects, can be found in the menu at the top, which is called Objects and is the first one in the view. In the security zones view, we see something that is the opposite of what we saw before. Before, we saw the name X0123, etc. And now we see the name LAN, 1, TMZ, VPN. And here we see a type of security and then we see the interfaces that are assigned to that security zone. An interface can only be assigned to one security zone, but we can have several interfaces assigned to the same security zone. It is in the security zones where we apply the security services. As you can see, there are several columns and it is indicating where we have certain security services activated. That does not mean that the security service is active, but rather that in the event that connections or traffic are initiated from the LAN zone, we want, for example, the antivirus gateway to be active. If we wanted to do the same for the VPN zone, all we have to do is edit this zone and of all the selectable ones here, in the event that we want an antivirus gateway, we would have to select this checkbox here and save it. I insist, this does not mean that the service is working. This means that in the event that it works, the traffic initiated in the zone for all the interfaces that belong to the zone will have or will be under the umbrella of Getu antivirus. A security zone is just a name to which we then assign interfaces. By default, 7 security zones are already created in firewalls, although we can create our own security zone that will in turn have to be associated with a type of security, for example, human resources assigned to the firewall. And if we want to enable security services, which is the most common, we select the security services we want to enable. We can create as many as we want. We are only going to create 2. And always select the security services, unless we do not want to do so. The main function of security zones, apart from applying services, is to orchestrate firewall rules. All firewall rules we create are going to be based on these security zones. When creating a new firewall rule, one of the first things we can do is select the source and destination of the traffic. And here you can see that we are not selecting interfaces, but rather zones. Once we have selected a source and a destination, we will see later how we can obviously select interfaces. This human resources zone and this IT zone do not have any member interfaces. To assign one of the interfaces to this zone, we go to the Interfaces menu and we are going to place, for example, X2 within Human Resources. We give it any address and allow the PIN, for example. And now we select X3 and assign it to IT. We are going to give it another address. And how to allow management through HTTPS and SSH as well. And if we return to the zone view, we will see the reverse view where we have the human resources zone with X2 and the RIT zone X3. The next thing we can do so that users who connect to X2 or X3 physically can work easily is to check if DHCP is enabled. The firewall can act as a DHCP server. We see that it is on X0 by default. And what we are going to do is add a new dynamic range. The easiest thing to do here is to use the pre-populate interface option. We are going to select X2 and we see that part of 81.1 to 81,253 indicates the gateway. We can put a comment. Let's apply it like this. And we do the same for yes, for X3. We save and now we have DHCP enabled on each of the interfaces. Obviously, until we connect anything, we will not see any DHCP deliveries of any kind. A recommendation when making DHCP reservations is that the firewall has a limit on the number of IP addresses it can give out via DHCP, and by default, when we mark or set a start range and an end range, the system reserves enough space to give them out. If we are very sure that the number of objects in one or both of the networks is going to be much smaller, we should limit the ranges we give out so that we have enough space for all the IP addresses we want to give out. This is something that can be checked very easily. I'll show you. If we take X4 and assign it to it in the LAN area, we put an IP of 100,001, for example, and we put this network mask, a complete Class A. The firewall protests here because it is asking me for confirmation of whether I want to not give management. Indeed, I do not want to. There is no problem in configuring a complete Class A. However, if we go to DHCP and create a dynamic entry with this new interface, and try to do this, the firewall immediately tells us that we won't be able to do it because its limit is 40.96 IP addresses, even though it hasn't given any IP addresses. So the recommendation to adjust the IP addresses may make sense when you start adding VLANs, interfaces, and so on to a firewall. If you've reserved 256 IPs for each of them, in the end, even though there really aren't that many devices on the networks, you could end up with a problem that's easy to solve, which is simply to go to this menu and narrow down the ranges of addresses that are given out a little bit. And that's it for the video. As always, I hope you found it useful. You can write comments or questions in the YouTube box. Thanks.